We start with Elbridge Colby, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Strategy Force Development, founder of the Marathon Project. It's good to see you. Nobody had this on their 2023 bingo card, so the way things have changed over the past 2 weeks is stunning. Let's be fair about this for a second. Is there a good strategic reason to not use the word Iran?
Well, I mean, I agree with you. I think it's very likely, well, and I think it's essentially a certainty that Iran is complicit with this, and it's very likely that Iran at least had some sense that there could be an escalation. Their exact role, it does seem to be still in dispute as to whether they had exact knowledge. And I mean, I think the argument is Israel is going to have its hands full with what is likely to be a very large, difficult, and costly incursion into the Gaza. And, you know, what exactly they're going to try to do, we don't know. I think America needs to have the back of its very close ally, Israel. But neither Israel nor the United States wants a multi-front war for Israel. And so, you know, the right way to try to manage that situation, that does require clarity and deterrence in addition to not, you know, exaggerating the situation, or not exaggerating, but overdoing the situation. But that's a delicate dance.
You said the word deterrence, and Prime Minister Netanyahu had said, and we've heard this reported, that deterrence needs to be restored because he felt as though there is not deterrence in the Middle East right now, and that America is not providing that deterrence. You say that we don't need a multi-front war. Completely agree with you. You think about attacks by all of these militias on U.S. forces. That doesn't happen by accident. I lived in the Middle East for 4 years. Coincidences are not something really that exists there. So this would be the question. Why in a world, and especially in the Middle East, where clarity and deterrence is so important, what is the advantage of ambiguity?
Well, look, I mean, I think whether or not Biden should, I think it makes sense for Biden to talk about Iran and make it clear that Iran is involved. I mean, they might have their own diplomatic reasons. I do think we need to be very intentional about what it is we're doing. I think the reality is we do not want to get enmeshed in another large Middle Eastern war, and if we can avoid that at all possible while supporting our very close ally Israel. And look, they've already mobilized their society. They're going to have to go into Gaza in a very big and bloody way. That's going to be difficult enough. Yeah. And thus far, the Northern Front has been relatively quiet. So, I mean, there are some calling for a dramatic expansion of the conflict. For instance, you know, large-scale attacks on Iran. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think the Israelis think that's a good idea either. No. And I don't think that's
and they don't want to fight a two-front war. I wonder though if don't is enough versus we will hold the Ayatollah responsible.
Well, I think that things like this, you know, freezing the $6 billion, these very clear signals, you know, where we move away from this kind of, you know, attempt to entice or even appease Iran, that makes a lot of sense.
I think what's interesting, you put this in a larger sense, and we'll put up the map again of where Iran's militias are and what they have. 1973, the Yom Kippur War, Israel is surprised, America is surprised. The Soviets start moving weapons and personnel towards the Mediterranean, as does the United States. Nixon famously stared down the Soviets. What's not on that map, but what is just north of that, is Russian hypersonic missiles and also 2 American carrier battle groups. What are you going to be listening for tonight in the messaging to Vladimir Putin as well?
Well, look, I think it's not an exaggeration to say that we are entering into something like the world crisis. I mean, that's the phrase that Winston Churchill used, so I always feel a little sheepish kind of using Churchillian language, but I think that actually that is something what's happening. I think people can feel it. I mean, we've had the outbreak of the largest war in Europe since the Second World War, and now there's a true atrocity, you know, atrocious attacks on the Jewish people, the worst since the Holocaust. And there's, you know, another shoe, I think the biggest shoe has yet to drop, which is Chinese action against Taiwan. I'm not even mentioning North Korea. The Russians and the North Koreans have been doing a great deal. I think there is a greater degree of alignment of all, and I do wonder what degree of collaboration there's going on. Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin spent an hour and a half alone yesterday in their meeting, I believe, in Beijing. That's just telling.
Yeah, very telling. I guess the next step would be, as I said at the top, our enemies are listening as well, and how they're going to hear this speech.
I think what's more important to hear from President Biden is not so much an identification of a threat, as important as that is. We are pretty good at that business in Washington, D.C. What we need to hear from President Biden is the opposite of what he said on 60 Minutes the other day, which was, we're America, there's no problem. And that's what you're hearing from Yellen and Austin and Jake Sullivan. No, we need to hear this is a world crisis. We are going to have to move together as a country. We're going to have to revamp our defense industrial base to be able to support not only the Israelis, but the Ukrainians, the Taiwanese. I mean, I have my views that we need to prioritize Asia as well as our close ally Israel. But we are in a crisis. And this kind of blasé, sanguine attitude is what I really worry about. And if he doubles down on that, I'm very concerned.
Fascinating.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.